Good morning. Good morning. I'm TinaO from Powerhouse, and we have just finished our live broadcast, live to LinkedIn, of Gather for Her. And as is my way, I'm popping in here to give you a brief recap about what happened in that hour and invite you to head on over to LinkedIn and watch it. Watch the full hour. And if you're like, yeah, I don't have time for that, join our audience, our Gather for Her, our Gather for Her, our Gather for Her audience by going to powerhouse.com, Gather for Her, and we'll keep you updated on all the upcoming conversations. It was a very powerful conversation. They all are, but I'll speak for me. It shook me a little. It also kind of rooted me a lot, sort of solidified. It's almost like I felt like someone grabbed my legs and went, stand here. So we were speaking with Janet Mohapi-Banks, who is not like, doesn't, doesn't shake people in that kind of like the way that I'm describing it, like somebody grabbed my legs and said, stand here. She's incredibly light and loving. Like love is what pours out of her. And it was a great lesson for me about what power can look like, the different faces of power. We were in a conversation about conscious leadership. And those two words, while we are starting to see them side by side now, they still often represent two very separate things. And we're still trying to figure out how, like, imagine if conscious leadership was one word, one concept, but we still tend to see it as two things. And so this was our conversation for the hour. What does it mean to be conscious? How do we get there? And some of the things that she offered were things like, it all starts with you. It all starts with you. And it sounds, to me, that's kind of a slippery thing. Like it starts with self-love. It starts with knowing self. It starts with whole self. And in that place of starting with you and knowing and living into what are you here for, which was her very first question. What are you here for? I'm just going to make sure I'm reading it exactly. Yeah. What they're really here for when she's working with individuals or organizations. That's the question. What are they really here for? And as when we make it about us in relationship with that question, what are you here for? And centered in this place of absolute love, everything changes. We got in this, and on the very last part of the conversation, and often you'll notice when I'm listening in conversations, the first 5 minutes is actually what the entire conversation ends up being about. And then the last 5 minutes often looks like this random thing that's taking us off track, but it's not. It's actually an implementation. It's like a way that the first thing, what are you here for, can live in the world. And so we got into this conversation actually about conscious consumerism, which is not what the whole conversation was about. But when you circled back to, wait a minute, this is a conversation about leadership. This is a conversation about organizational change making. This is a conversation about how do leadership teams, how do they serve, and how does their organization serve? When you go right to the end user of the product, and we start making choices about how we buy products consciously, that will change the way we make products consciously. So it was like, again, remember how I was saying in the beginning of this conversation, like conscious leadership, two ideas. We've also got employee, leadership team or CEO or decision makers, two different things. But we're like, how does this happen? How does this happen? We got into brand loyalty. We got into emotional loyalty. We got into where does that come from? And it doesn't come from here. It comes from here. We got into magnetism, the magnetism of a leader, and Janet offered to us that magnetism Magnetism is simply living from the heart space, leading from the heart space, running an organization from the heart space, running your work from the heart space, seeing your employees from their heart space. And we got into when we start to value each individual in our organizations from I'm paraphrasing, this is Tina language, from a do no harm perspective, do all love perspective. How we run our companies change. How we serve our customers change. We got into profit. We got into, long time ago, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first three layers of being safe, being cared for, being taken care of, your basic needs are being met. That business used to actually be about making sure, maybe not about, but part of their structures were ensuring that every employee had what they needed, right? You could live on what you made because that's what you made. And keeping your employees were about that. We all know this conversation. And Janet shared with us that she's just read this article that flipped it, like acknowledging that most people have three jobs. So as you're putting your schedule together, in the organization that you run, make sure you make room for your employees to have two other jobs. It's like, whoa, what is happening? What have we accepted? What have we accepted, and what paradigm are we living into? And again, I come back to the two sides of this, and that's kind of what it kept feeling like. And we talked about the cost of change, and that's why we will often hold on to the old paradigm of doing and being and the way we do business, because we're afraid to let go because of the cost of that change, that in-between place, which is why many of us self-identify as change makers, because we're actually leading into that middle space, trying to help people get from here to here. I feel like even my sharing right now is a bit popcorny. Like I'm offering a lot of concepts and no answers, because again, I feel like I was shaken in this conversation. Even though it was really gentle and I was super present in this moment, I'm feeling the effect of that conversation. And it all came down to this changes everything. That when we start to get conscious with our choices, with the way we lead, with the way that we relate, with all of that, it actually changes everything. And the offering that she invited us into, which I'm noticing is actually hard for me to allow in this moment, just naming my resistance to it, even though I believe it, is that it's actually in that, like once we're over that threshold and we're into the change, everything is easier. Everything's easier. Conscious leadership isn't hard. Conscious leadership isn't hard. It's the change to conscious leadership that is hard. I'm saying that. She didn't say that. I said that. So I invite you to have a listen into the LinkedIn recording of the conscious leadership conversation that we had with Janet and what comes up for you. Know that Gather for Her is, the purpose of Gather for Her is to be in service of the change makers who are watching it, to be in service of those who may not self-identify as a change maker, but think, you know what, I want to contribute. I can feel an urge of change inside of me. I just don't know where to put it. And in that, it's a space for us to have the hard conversations, to feel like I feel right now, and to dig into that, and to find support for that, and clues for that, and paths for that. So I encourage you to have a watch, have a listen, and pop your stuff in the comments, and we'll respond. And thank you for being here and being a change maker and walking beside us as we walk beside you. I want you to know that Powerhouse is offering First Steps on April 20th. It's a 90-day cohort for whole leaders. Whole is a whole leadership program for individuals and teams. And that's so much about the direction we're going. To be a conscious leader, it starts with you, and it goes back to that first question that Janet asked us. What are you really here for? Who are you really? In the wholeness of you. Yeah, so come on over to powerhouse.com. Check out Janet Mohapi-Banks, who was our guest today. Check out First Steps. Check out the Leader Path, and know that we are a community of change makers walking beside you, and we're here to be the hands at your back. I'm TinaO from the house. Thank you for being in process with me today, because that's what it feels like. All right, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you on Gather.